Bonjour. Bonjour, good afternoon. Today, Environment and Climate Change Canada's enforcement branch announced the launch of an official investigation into the Imperial oil Kearl facility. Environment and Climate Change Canada's officials have been actively engaged since we became aware of the seepage and the spill, visiting multiple times to inspect and collect samples. The decision to move from an inspection to launch a full investigation means that the file has reached a stage where officers will determine whether charges are warranted for non-compliance with the Federal Fisheries Act. It means the process is underway to hold the company to account. But as this is an active investigation, I can't say any more at this point. Canada has a fair and impartial system for enforcing federal laws to protect the environment, and I cannot prejudice the investigation. Furthermore, internal analysis conducted by my department has revealed the serious gaps in reporting and notification of these incidents. This is why we are co-developing with Indigenous communities and the Government of Alberta and the Northwest Territories new measures to strengthen notification and monitoring systems. The basis of our working group are under development. We need to see the company reclamation plans for these tailing ponds and how this reclamation will be done in a way that considers the Indigenous communities that live on the land. We need to study the risks from the tailing ponds and the oil sands and the risk to human health so that we can better understand the gravity of the problem and identify the right course of action. I won't rest until we find solutions. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Merci, Steven. Bonjour tout le monde. As Albertans, there are two fundamental truths. One is that we're very proud of the oil and gas sector and all the workers that make up that sector, and also the prosperity that it's brought to Alberta and to Canada. And equally, we're very proud of the environment that we have, the amazing nature that we have, and safe drinking water and healthy communities. And so when we have an indication or when we have an incident like Imperial oil and tailings ponds that are not accounted for and that communities are not informed, it's simply unacceptable. And Imperial Oil CEO did not acquit himself well at committee. In fact, they did themselves no favors. And so when I hear people in Alberta saying we want answers, we want solutions, we want a real plan, I stand with those peoples. It's not fair and it's unjust for Indigenous communities that are living downstream to have questions about their drinking water table and, quite frankly, the health of the natural environment. And so I'm standing with Minister Guilbeault here and saying very clearly on behalf of Albertans that apologies after the fact aren't good enough. We need Imperial to come to the table with real solutions and a plan that has answers and a path forward, and that is what is going to be in the interests of Albertans and all Canadians. Merci beaucoup.
So, Minister, in English and French, what's the maximum consequence that we could see resulting from these charges?
Well, as I said, since it is now an active investigation, I can't make any further comments. But you can look back in history of Canada and the enforcement branch and environmental fines that have happened. But I won't speculate on what could happen as there is an ongoing investigation. But we would be happy to provide you with a list of the latest, say in the last few years, the fines that have been imposed in Canada as per our environmental laws. But again, I'm not speculating on this specific case right now.
Why did it take so long to sorry, go ahead.
Ah,
remarks in French because our Radio Canada colleagues will want this as well.
En fait, aujourd'hui, les représentants d'Environnement et Changement climatique Canada, responsables de l'application de la loi environnementale, ont décidé de faire en sorte que l'enquête sur la fuite de la mine Kearl Mine en Alberta passait à une autre étape, celle d'une enquête. C'est une étape importante et ça veut dire que les fonctionnaires indépendants de l'équipe de mise en œuvre des lois ont décidé qu'il fallait pousser plus loin les recherches et l'analyse sur les fuites qu'il y a eu à la mine Kearl. Je ne peux en dire plus à ce moment puisqu'il y a une enquête qui est maintenant ouverte par cette branche d'Environnement et Changement climatique Canada et il faudra suivre de très près au cours des prochaines semaines et des prochains mois l'évolution de la situation. Merci.
And why did it take so long to finally launch an investigation? The leak happened months ago, but why it take so long to finally move to this step?
Well, as you probably know, the the Indigenous communities, as well as Environment and Climate Change Canada, were only notified months after the leaks started happening. The enforcement branch of Environment and Climate Change Canada is totally independent from me. They don't take orders from me. I don't tell them what to do. They do their work independently, and they have been looking into this since we have been made aware of this, which was only some weeks ago. And today they have issued this decision to move to the next step in regards to Kearl Mine.
But are you, I don't know, a bit disappointed that it's taken this long to take this action, considering a lot of Indigenous communities are really upset that they've been in the dark, and to your point, the government too, but it's taken weeks to finally, talk about an investigation, let alone how much longer are we going to wait until, possible charges are laid?
I'm very disappointed that neither the Alberta regulator nor the company, in that case Imperial Oil, decided to notify the Indigenous communities or the federal government before someone else actually found out that there was a leak there. So that's what I'm really disappointed about.
But do you not think the legislation needs to be tightened up? I mean, every day there's contaminants going into the soil there. It's affecting the communities. It's gone on there. I mean, both the Alberta regulator and Imperial, as you saw at the committee, haven't really shown good faith. So does the legislation need to be tightened up so operations are suspended, that there's no incentive on the company to suspend operations right now?
As I've said before, the processes we have in place right now have failed Indigenous communities, have failed Albertans, and have failed Canadians. And we need to do better, which is why I have proposed to the Alberta government, the Northwest Territory government, the Indigenous communities, that we sit down together and that we figure out better ways of tackling this. There's an immediate issue with the tailing ponds. There's a longer issue with what we will do in terms of reclamation of these tailing ponds, but immediately we want to reassure communities that live around the oil sands that the water that they rely on every day is safe for drinking. And we have testing happening in the communities right now, and since the end of March, we now know that the water is safe for drinking purposes. Yes, we are acting, which is why we recognize that the systems in place right now do not work, which is why we're proposing to change them.
Can I get your response on what, to sit in committee last week and see the Alberta Energy Regulator refuse to tell the committee when they notified the Alberta government? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I can't comment on Alberta government processes, but I think even Premier Smith said that she was disappointed in how slow the Alberta regulator was to act. And I think we all recognize that the situation right now is untenable, and we can't continue going on this way, which is why we're proposing to change the way we do things.
Sorry, can I just get you in French, just responding about your disappointment with the way the process has been handled?
Je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui sont très déçus et dans certains cas très inquiets, les communautés autochtones qui dépendent de cette eau potable. Mais je pense que les Albertains ont été très déçus, les Canadiens et les Canadiennes ont été très déçus. Il a fallu plusieurs mois, près de 9 mois, avant que les communautés autochtones, la population, le gouvernement fédéral apprennent qu'il y avait eu une fuite, alors qu'on aurait dû le savoir très rapidement. Et c'est pourquoi nous proposons de mettre en place un nouveau mécanisme sur la surveillance et sur tout ce qui est transmission d'informations concernant ces lacs d'eau contaminés qu'on retrouve dans les sables bitumineux.
Je pense que, Steven, c'est aussi important de noter en français que les règlements qui sont en place sont là pour protéger les Albertains, les Canadiens, mais au bout de la ligne, c'est la responsabilité de la compagnie Imperial de s'agir. On a besoin des réponses, on a besoin d'un plan, et on a besoin des étapes concrètes pour répondre aux Albertains et aux Canadiens comment ces dégâts se sont arrivés et c'est quoi le plan pour nettoyer tout ce qui est passé pour ces communautés autochtones. Et suite à ça, on peut améliorer les processus et les réglementations, mais les Albertains sont déçus et ils en ont raison pour être déçus.
Given that there were two separate incidents at Kearl. Is this investigation for one incident or two? Is it like two separate investigations, or how is that working?
The enforcement branch has issued a press release. There will be more information as they continue their work. I don't have right in front of me the exact information why the enforcement branch decided which incident that has led to their decision to move this into an inquiry.
Can I just ask you a question about meeting the $100 billion U.S. annual goal for climate financing? How do we meet that goal? Because for the last couple of years, we haven't been meeting that goal.
So, as you know, the organization that helps us see through this is the OECD. In 2020, we were about $16 billion short of meeting that goal. Canada and Germany have been doing a lot of work over the last few years. My predecessor, Minister Wilkinson, myself, we've co-chaired international working groups looking at this. And the analysis from the OECD is that we will be meeting our $100 billion goal this year in 2023. We are waiting for the analysis from the OECD, which should confirm this, and we should have this analysis from the OECD in the coming months.
And you're not satisfied. So what are the next steps? Because 100 billion US is not enough.
No, absolutely not, which is why Canada was the first of Western countries to agree to have a real conversation about the issue of loss and damage. Initially, that wasn't very well received by some of our partners, but in the end, at COP27, all countries agreed that we needed to move forward on the issue of loss and damage. The Prime Minister, in a recent meeting with Prime Minister Mia Mottley from Barbados, also agreed to work with her, as well as others, to see how we can unlock hundreds of billions of dollars that we could, with international monetary institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, and other multilateral institutions, to provide more support for the Global South in fighting climate change and in adapting to climate change. Thank you. Merci.